Sacha Noukhovitch, who's the Executive Director of the STEM Fellowship. So he'll talk to us about educating students in Toronto and Ontario about open data and big data. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Noukhovitch.
It's a pleasure to hear that there is a number of teachers or people related to education in the crowd. And actually, I personally believe that we all experts in education, because one way or another, you went through educational process and you have your own experience, positive or maybe not exactly perfect, but at least you all probably know what is the best way to teach. So, it all started with the current students who are totally different in the way of learning, in the way of perceiving the information. Actually, it is quite shocking, particularly with the standard and established practices and established pedagogies, because often these students don't fit to the extent that it is even qualified as learning disabilities. It's sometimes recognized as students not being able to control themselves or keeping attention. And this is supposedly growing and in huge numbers diagnosis with students. I think is not exactly the fault of students. It's actually a certain conflict between the way they've been developing their own learning styles and current educational system. If I can go back. So the point is that we're dealing with the new data native generation of students. And I can tell you that what is interesting about modern students, that they are not following the steps of traditional education. They are not linear learners. They are tapping, with open access journals, with the scholarly publication on Facebook, with the wealth of knowledge spilling into, let's say, internet. They became uninvited. So actually, they became uninvited users of this knowledge. And it's very interesting that they became maybe the most active, proud, using this information. Yes, they lack the fundamental skills. And what is interesting, they lack fundamental skills in sense of, let's say, traditional science. But in sense of handling information, they are natural data scientists. They've been probably dealing with finding patterns, with processing data for when they in, let's say, in grade 10. They've probably been dealing with it for 5, 6 years. Actually, maybe more, because really our modern student is practicing data analysis from the age of 3 or 4. They are natural data scientists, which come to the school with already developed techniques, already developed learning style, which is not the style traditionally taught in faculties of education. It's not an audio, it's not tangible. It is simply different logic of accepting of information. Teachers are shocked with the fact that students are looking up the answers. Teachers are shocked that students are actually assembling knowledge like a puzzle. It is wrong according to the pedagogy, which is actually probably 100 years old, at least if we're looking into any of the fundamental research underlying any of the teachings. And you will find these talking people on saying school is outdated. School is not teaching individuals, school is teaching them in crowd. Yes, it's true. Question is, what is the alternative way of teaching students? And here is an interesting thing. Actually, what we do, and I personally feel as an educator we should be doing, we should follow the student and learn and study their methods, their techniques of education. So how they, you see what I'm using here as a background they use online academic communities to understand complex concepts. And the slide here points to papers we love. Absolutely different type of learning. It is a mix driven by students, mostly university students, but with a strong presence of even high school students who are discussing and collectively presenting on the topics which they have most expertise in. So there is no, let's say, ownership of the podium in sense of teaching. I believe you are familiar with this slide. At least you will find that this is a community of learners where age doesn't matter, but of course driven by modern students. And what is critical, it is not instituted after a whole day of teaching. My tongue doesn't work like it's supposed to. Institutionalized. So these people are not part of any organization. They don't even share the same subscription to the scholarly journal. You see, any subscription, it's also community. They're simply proud. They're simply proud, which is contributing to understanding of some problem of mutual interest. They crowdsource scientific knowledge. And this is a new journal of Reddit where each of participants votes up and down the opinions, eventually creating an objective description and objective knowledge. If we can go ahead. And here we are. STEM Fellowship came about on the principles that this generation needs a forum, this generation needs a venue to express themselves. It came initially with a big data challenge for high school students, specifically for high school students, based on the principles of providing tools and data to students who don't have prior experience with data analysis at all. But they do have their natural ability, their natural skills, which they apply in this competition. We also believe that another component, there are two pillars of modern education or future education. It is data analysis or data science, and it should change around the whole educational process. It should remove the subject silos. It should actually be learning of music based on the data. It should transfer this into geography, and it's not, I'm advocating not to use data for learning geography. I'm advocating for learning geography based on data, and actually not learning geography, learning data, which is about everything. Yes, there is already a country which decided to go away from the subject taught in school. Finland is teaching subject-less or provide subject-less education. I don't know how they're doing it, because can you imagine, the College of Teachers would be able to graduate one teacher, because they have to give two qualifications, the basic. How would you hire people? How would you evaluate? It is so much, but they somehow do it. Going back to second pillar, it is scientific writing. And here is another point why scientific writing is so critical. Scientific writing, it is an expression of thought, it is an expression of scientific method. And data analysis today, it is much more than simply computation. It is actually new scientific method. It's believed that Mendeleev saw his periodic table in a dream. Quite possible. Yes, back then he was working in the field, he was studying so much, and eventually it came to him in a dream. All according to atomic weights and everything came, maybe, nobody knows, maybe it's a story. There is too much information today to summarize and develop patterns, to handle it with the abilities of, let's say, individual research. You need analytical methods. You need to bring yourself forward, to bring yourself on top of understanding and accumulation of the new knowledge. That is why two things are directly connected: scientific writing and data analysis. And that's why we are pushing in both directions. We actually got a beautiful partner, which is a giant of data analytics in scientific writing, digital science, and what is coming next? And then, well, I will say this, and then I will leave everything to you. Well, I have to say what kind of, I already was saying how interesting, how pleased I am to be here. Because you have to understand that having got a consulting career, having been in education, I saw different faces and see them on a regular basis. And it kind of teaches me to understand who I see in front of me. What is interesting and absolutely different, we're dealing with a different generation of people, much better than I am. New generation of students, including many present here, are much more open to innovation, much more tolerant to new ideas. This is a critical point. And I want to list few things. These are faces from who actually STEM fellowship is all over the country. Vasily, I believe she's Vancouver. Or Calgary. Mohammed, Vancouver. Nikki is Toronto. So STEM fellows bridge learning styles between different academic schools. What I mean, you see, there is actually, when you brought up in one culture, you think in certain logic. Modern students don't have this kind of inner editor, or they are much open to, and they have the ability, oh, long story. The review process, it's an inquiry. They are not simply imposing their authority. They are going through the discovery from scratch. And they are bringing the whole power of these online communities to help them in the review process they are doing in our peer review journal. Although, yes, after that it goes to PhDs, which are doing what I mentioned. And they're using the word polyglot. Not that they are multilingual. They have this polyglot approach. They do think differently, language-wise. Now it's you.
Yes. All right. So this leaves us with a stark reminder to me that I should be careful with finish formatting. Right. So we have a new level of thought and innovation amongst these modern learners, as Dr. Noukhovitch said. We have kind of, I would say, the internet just joining together all different kinds of students with their different learning styles, different ways of acquiring knowledge, learning new things, and even the requirements of being educated. We have all these platforms offering MOOCs like Coursera, edX, all that. So those are becoming increasingly more prominent as well. So then the question remains, how can we reframe pedagogy as a whole to start meeting this generation of data native students halfway? How can we incorporate this new style of thinking, this new style of learning, and incorporating knowledge into pedagogy to just meet them where they are instead of enacting these increasingly outdated means of teaching things. But that will be a topic for our breakout group. And that would include our presentation, but we talked about the big data challenge really briefly. I'll just show you guys that really quick, because that's going on right now. What this is essentially is that it's a competition that lasts over 2 months and is a participant survey. Is this not showing up?
You have to drag it onto the screen.
I see.
It's probably the screen.
Okay, let me.
We're so close.
Wait.
We need technical assistance.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
We're lucky to say drag it over.
Oh, okay.
Alright, very
I can
nice.
do that.
You have to kind of like figure out a typo you look up there.
It's not much, just need to scroll down. This is a big data challenge. It's going on right now as we speak. It started in early November. Essentially, high school students assemble teams, high school students from a number of schools. They're listed below, which is kind of countertypical for this presentation. But these high school students are then provided tools by companies, scroll back up, by SAS, for instance, provide a statistical suite that some of you may have heard of, and then learning modules from IBM Big Data University and SciNet. This kind of feeds into this whole concept of data native students learning on their own, using their own process of knowledge acquisition, working at their own pace. What they're actually doing with all these tools is working through altmetric data. So altmetric tracks alternative sources of impact data aside from citations of scientific papers. And the idea of this concept is that these students will use altmetric data to test their own hypotheses about where science as a whole is heading based on the kind of impact certain areas of research are having over others. So at the very end of this competition, which will be sometime next year, they're going to be presenting at SAS Canada's headquarters and getting a bunch of cool prizes. I'm sure you'll regret not being high school students. And in the meantime, they're being mentored by people who are skilled in data analysis and have been doing this a while. So I'm not going to talk through this. Yeah. So this is what we're doing right now in order to basically teach high school students open data principles at their own pace. And that's what I'll have.
One maybe addition. Who is teaching music? On the year before, there was one data analysis which actually the topics of research is defined by students. They come with the ideas, what they are mining data for. And this one was really something absolutely surprising to me. So they found that strings are more academic related rather than pipes, following course selection within the goal of within the period of 5 years on the school with 2,300 students. So that's an example of who would think, and actually, like everything in statistics, you have to double check.
All right, so I think we went a little over time, sorry. So I don't know if there's that much time for questions. But
15 minutes for questions.
all right, so thanks everybody. We'll take a couple of questions now.
This is directed to the professor. Do you marry any other type of skill to what you're doing that you think maybe sort of helps that balance of being this person who kind of, like these kids who kind of think differently, but like you said, they're kind of going through that experience, that realization. Do you marry another skill that helps them be able to understand their thought process or how they're evolving?
If we're talking about, I do teach high school students data analysis. And yes, it is probably the first pilot in Canada, and it is part of grade 12 computer science curriculum. So they are taught SAS programming as a language, and first of all as a data analytics approach. But I cherish the big data competition much more than my teaching, let's say, whatever teaching I'm doing in this field. Because I personally believe by providing students an opportunity to apply this potential they have in the field, and here is answer to your question. They choose the topic. It can be health studies. There were absolutely overwhelming study of the correlation between breast cancer and wealth in Toronto. There was absolutely shocking findings of one group, which areas in Toronto, which pockets are best for immigrants. Nobody was even thinking anymore about the how they came, what was the methods they applied, because everybody was arguing whether it's right or not. And these topics are generated by students. This is ideas. This is something which they come when they're looking at that. If I answer.
So I have a question, I guess more related to you as a high school teacher versus like you dealing with the institution, the school board, where it seems like you have a certain vision of pedagogy that, as you kind of hinted at, doesn't seem to comport with what the school board has in mind. So how do you bring in something? How do you as a high school teacher kind of, I guess, square that circle to like, teach students what you think, what you find helpful, and embrace that pedagogy, but at the same time you're evaluated on certain standards set by the school board?
Well, I'm doing my best, of course, to convince, but I'm waiting for this generation of teachers to retire. No, actually, yes, it is an uphill battle. And I understand that we have a serious matter to address. Like I said, hiring practices, evaluation practices, school structure. Can you imagine school structures are exactly the same as Ireland? So they got the same structure of departments as Ireland. I believe when I made this comment, I felt that I did something wrong because it wasn't politically correct.
If you're more interested in that, if you're